I run a strategy which historically demonstrated a max drawdown of 20%. Right now, I am at a point where the strategy is an 18% drawdown. So I'm right almost there. How do I kind of reason this out?
First thing to say is that max drawdown is an absolutely terrible performance metric. First of all, it's exposed to outliers, either the lack of outliers or the presence of outliers. In a very long backtest, you might have a max drawdown that's unusually high because there just happen to be a few very bad events in a short period of time. More dangerously, if your backtest is too short, you might be missing those bad events and your drawdown would be unusually good. The other issue with max drawdown is, from a statistical perspective, it means that it's got what's called a very high sampling error. And so I talked briefly about bootstrapping, but basically you shouldn't just look at your max drawdown in a backtest, you should look at the distribution of your max drawdown. In other words, how likely is it that you'd see a 20% drawdown? Obviously that's going to be the median expectation, but 18% and 25%. The other problem with max drawdown is it scales with time. If your backtest is 2 years long and your max drawdown is 20%, well that means that your max drawdown expectation over 2 years is 20%. Your max drawdown expectation over 1 year is going to be smaller and your max drawdown expectation over 5 years is going to be bigger. So you, as well as bootstrapping your max drawdowns, you need to bootstrap it for a particular length of time. So if you've only got a 2-year backtest and you've been trading for 5 years, you actually need to do some work to say, well, what's the likelihood of getting a 18% drawdown over 5 years? It's going to be much smaller than 50% because the period of time is longer. I'm approaching a drawdown it seems unlikely given my backtest. Unlikely, wouldn't be a 50% chance, right? It would be something smaller like 25% or 10% or 5% or 1%. So let's say you're approaching a drawdown, there's only a 10% chance you'd expect to see it given your backtest and the length of time you've been trading. It's helpful as to what you should do, the answer is I don't know. Max drawdown is a terrible statistic to use. I would use something like average return myself personally. In some rolling period of time, has my average return been more than X standard deviations away from where I expect it? But if you do insist on in that case, again, I would potentially do something, potentially turn it off or shut it down, because then it's become highly probable that either it worked before and it's no longer working, or alternatively, you've screwed up, you made a mistake somewhere, maybe your costs are too high and so on and so forth. But those things should be checked independently. But as I said, with the sort of speed of trading I'm doing, it would take a very long time indeed for me to come to the conclusion that my losses were out of line with what I'd seen in a 50-year backtest. So in practice, the question doesn't really it's not really relevant to me. It would only be relevant to someone trading much quicker instead of the high frequency traders, as I said. So with all of those caveats, then yes, sure. If you're seeing an improbably low level of return from your strategy, where improbably low is defined properly rather than just comparing a max drawdown in live and a max drawdown in backtest, then yes, potentially you should turn it off or modify it in some way.